Hi guys, how are you doing? You're welcome back to yet another tutorial video. Guys, before we proceed, I just want to ask, how are you doing? Like, genuinely, how are you doing? Like, I just hope it's going well with you over there. Even if it's not well, even if it's not great with you, just keep up alive. Do not give up yet. It's going to be well very soon. Okay? I'm not even being motivational here, but I'm just showing concern just to know how you are doing. So guys, in this tutorial today, we are going to be making this very beautiful, classy, big girl vibe 3-layer dress. Guys, I love this dress. It's so comfortable. Like, it's the comfort that comes with this dress for me. And the juicy part of this tutorial is that I have a secret. I have a little bit of secret somewhere in between this tutorial. And if you want to find out where that secret lies, do not skip any part of this tutorial. Watch from the very beginning to the end, okay? You know, when it comes to your peplum cotton, I have something there for you. Something there is waiting for you. Do not skip, okay? So guys, please subscribe, like, all the good things to do, right? Just get that done, okay? So guys, without further ado, let's dive right into the tutorials of the day. To get started, I have the fabric folded into two like so, and to get the width of the fabric, I'm going to be dividing the hip by 4 plus 3 inches seam allowance at most, or 3.5. So once I have that width, then I have the width of the fabric that I'm going to be working with, so I'm fine with this. So the next, I'm going to be getting the length for the inner of this dress, and for that I'm going to be taking away 7 inches from the upper part of the dress, like an off shoulder dress, and then I place my tape rule at the 7 inches mark, and then I get the length that I want. And for the length, I'm going to be using the hip length plus about 3 to 4 inches, depending on how long you want it to be. If you want it to like a full short length dress, then that is fine, but for me, I'll just use the hip length measurement. So this is my hip length plus an extra 3 to 4 inches, okay? So I have that marked out at this point, so it gives me 31 inches at the end of the day. As you can see, I have between the hip line and the length of the inner dress, I have to be 4 inches, and I'm okay with that. The flare is going to cover up for the rest of the length of the dress, so I have that marked out. So with that being done, I have the length to work with, and for now I'm going to be using this part as the upper part and then here as the lower part. So I take back my tape and I place it at the 7 inches mark, okay? So at this point, I'm going to be marking out the armhole length. And the armhole length I'll be using is 8 inches. So I mark out the 8 inches at this point. So this is the armhole length. And then I come down to the lower part and I mark the hip length as well. So we have here as the hip length. And these are basically the two major vertical measurements that you'll be needing. If you are going to be marking out the breast point, it's not necessary, but you can just mark it out, just to cross check by the time you're done. So I have here as the breast point. Please note that if your armhole length is 7, then you don't need to add anything, just like I did, okay? And if you're even going to use 8 inches as your off shoulder, then you just use it straight like that, unless you want to make your neckline deeper, okay? But I marked the 1 inch extra, that's the 8 inches for the armhole, because the off shoulder length I'm using is 7, and then the armhole I'm supposed to use is 8. But if my armhole length is 7 inches, then I'm going to be using it just like as it is, without cutting out any armhole, okay? So just take note of that, just in case your armhole is 7 or you are using the length, that is the off shoulder length of 8 inches, okay? So just take note of that. Next, I'll be marking out the across chest measurement, and the across chest measurement here is 5 inches. That's 10 inches divided by 2 will give us 5 inches plus half an inch. So I'm going to be marking out 5.5 inches for the across chest. This is because we are not using the shoulder measurement in this case, okay? So the next thing I'll be doing is, at this armhole length, I'm going to be dividing the upper chest round measurement by 4 inches plus the seam allowance I wish to use. So in this case, the upper chest round measurement is 36 inches. Divide by 4 will give us 9 inches, and then plus the 1 inch or 1.5 seam allowance that you'll be adding to it. So at this point, I'm marking out the across chest round measurement here, and then I make a connection from there to the across chest upper part. So as you can see, that gives us the armhole curve, okay? So I come down to the hip line area, and then I divide the hip round measurement by 4 plus 3 inches seam allowance, and the hip here divided by 4 would give me 10 1/4 plus 3 inches will give us 13 1/4, okay? So I have that marked out. So I'm going to be connecting the hip to the upper round chest measurement, like you can see, okay? So I'm going to be connecting that to that, and also to the lower part of the dress at this point. So this is the connection between all the points. Now that I have that, I come down to the lower part. I'll be coming up by 1 inch just to give me that curve. I don't want it sharp at that point, so I'll be curving it in with the help of this curve rule. So I have that marked out, and with that being done, the basic inner base for this dress is ready. And then just compare the bust measurement to see that you don't necessarily need all the measurements marked out. So let's measure. So the bust here at the breast point length is when we divide, give us 9.5. So I have an extra 1/4 of an inch to work with for the bust. So you see that you don't need to mark out every other measurement that you need, so just take the basic one. And with that, you can now use this to cut out the back. The only difference between the front and the back is just going to be the neckline, in case you want the back neckline to be deeper, just like I did in this case, as you can see. So you just add like 1 inch or 1.5, depending on how deep you want the back to be, and then you just connect back to the across back for the back in this case, and then that's it for the back. And now I can go about the cutting. As you can see what I was saying, you can see the back is lower by 1 inch from the front. Depending on how you want the neckline to look, then you can just play around it for your own sake. Then this is what it looks like. This is the back, and then this is the front. So I place the back on over the front like so. You can see what the neckline is looking like. I'm going to be marking out the points that I'll be placing the peplum on. So now we have the 3 points where the peplum will be attached to ready, so the up, the middle, and the lower. And for the cutting of the flared, a little calculation is going to be involved, so just pay attention to how I go about the calculation, and then you understand better. So for the upper chest is 36 inches, plus I'm going to be adding 2 inches seam allowance. And please take note that all the seam allowances that I'm going to be adding, I'm going to be dividing it into 8, because the number of folds for the flare, I'm going to be folding the fabric into 8. Okay, so all the seam allowances is going to be divided into 8. So the upper chest with the seam allowance gave me 38 inches in total. Okay, so for the waist area, that's the second layer of the flared, where the second flared is going to be fixed, that's around the waist area, and the waist here is 32 inches. So what we are going to be doing is 32 inches. I'm going to be adding 10 inches to that. Okay, it's either you add 10 inches or you measure around that part. From when I was cutting the base of the dress, you remember where I marked as the where I'm going to be attaching the second flared. So it's either you measure that place around, or you just add about 10 inches to your waist measurement. And with this, you should have enough to go around that part of the waist. And then for the hip, or the hip area where you're going to be attaching the last flared, you are going to be adding about 12 inches to whatever you have as the hip measurement, or you also measure around that part of the hip to get exactly what you're supposed to use. So the hip measurement here is approximately 42 inches plus an extra 12 inches to give 54 inches. Okay, so these are the 3 new measurements that we'll be using to divide our flared into the number of folds that we have. So for the upper chest, we divide it by 8, the waist we divide by 8, the hip we also divide by 8, divide by 8. And by the time we divide all this by 8, whatever it gives us is what we are going to be using for the upper circumference of our flared. Okay, so that's why I did this calculation before we proceed to the cutting. So by the time we divide the upper chest into 8, it's going to give us 4.75, and when we divide the waist measurement into 8 as well, it's going to give us 5.25, and by the time we divide the hip also, it's going to give us 6.75. So all these are what we are going to be using to get the upper measurement of the flared, that's the upper circumference of our flared. So let's assume that this is our fabric placed on 8 folds. So I come to this upper part of the flared. I'm going to be marking out for the upper chest. Remember, we have 4.75. I'm going to be placing my tape rule around like this to get the spot that would give me approximately 4.75 or a little above that. So let's assume that this is the place. So I mark that out, and then I place my tape rule at the 2 points to know what it gives me. So this point gave me about 2.625, and then this point gave me 2.5, but I'm going to be using what I have at the other end, which is 2.625. Since I have 2.625 at both ends, I come to the middle and I also mark 2.625. I'm going to be measuring this part to see if it is going to give me approximately or a little more than 4.75. So I carefully place my tape rule around that area. So this gave me about 4.5, and what we need is 4.75. So I'm going to be increasing the point to 2.75 instead of the 2.65 that we used initially, to see if it's going to give me exactly what we want. And as you can see, it has given me approximately 4.75. So with this, now we now know that what we are going to be marking from the tip of our fabric to get the upper circumference for the upper chest is going to be 2.75. So I get my marker pen and then I make it more visible. So I mark out the whole thing and then I connect the points together. So with that, our upper chest circumference is set, so we know exactly what to cut on our fabric for the upper chest. Next, we are going to be marking that of the waist. The one we got for the upper chest is going to make the rest of them a lot much easier. So the one for the upper chest, remember it gave us 2.75. So the next one, let's just manipulate 3 and see if 3 inches is going to give us exactly what we want for the waist by the time we measure. So I'm going to be marking from the top of the peplum, that's the top of the fabric. Let's assume this is my fabric. I mark 3 inches just like I did to the upper chest one, and then I measure to see if that is going to give me exactly what we want. And as you can see, it gave us exactly, this gave us 5 points, exactly 5.25. Can you see that? So for the waist area, we are going to be using the upper one to be 3 inches. So for the hip area, since this one gave us 3 inches, let's try 4 inches and see if it's going to give us exactly what we want. So I'm going to be marking 4 inches as well, just like I did to the first two. I mark it all the way around and then I measure to see if that is going to give us. So let's watch and see. So this gives us exactly, can you see that? This is very nice. So I connect. So with this now, we have all the upper circumference that we're going to be cutting on our fabric. So the first one, that's for the upper chest, gave us 2.75. The one for the waist gave us 3 inches, and the one for the hip gave us 4 inches. So by the time we fold our fabric into 8 places, we already know what to do instead of folding and refolding our fabric. So for the upper chest one, we are going to be starting with that, and the length of the peplum I'm going to be using is 12 inches. So I'm going to be adding 12 inches to whatever I have for the upper chest, the waist, and then the hip. Okay, so 2.75 plus 12 inches is going to give us approximately 15 inches. So 15 inches times 2 is going to give us 30. So the first folding of my fabric is going to be 30 inches. So I measure to see if that gave me 30. So this is 29, so I shift to give me 30 inches. So I have 30 inches here, so I have the first fold to be 30, and then I fold again, that is making it 4 folds. So definitely this is going to give me 15 inches, and then I fold again to give me a square. So from here to here should give me 15 inches, and also the other side should also give me 15 inches, making it like a square. Okay, and coming back to our calculations, the first one gave us 2.75. So I'm going to be marking 2.75 from the tip of the fabric, just as you can see, like so. And then I connect everything together, and then I come down from that point. I'm going to be marking the length of the flare or the peplum, which is 12 inches. So I mark from that 2.75 point, I mark 12 inches downwards, and then I also connect like so. So with this now, we have the first peplum or the first flare for our dress ready. So this is what the first flare look like. So for the second one, the third one, I'm not going to be marking everything separately. I'm just going to be marking it on this one just to save time. So I come to this upper point as well. Remember the first one gave us 2.75. So from that point again, I'm going to be marking 3 inches for this. That's for the second peplum, the one on the waist area. So this is 3 inches. So from that 3 inches, I also mark my 12 inches just like I did to the first one. Okay, and then I connect as well. So for the last one, I repeat the same process, which is 4 inches from the tip of the fabric, and then I connect as well. And from that 4 inches point, I also mark my 12 inches. So for the second and third peplum, remember the way I folded my first one, so you also fold it like that. You add for the waist, you add 3 inches to 15, whatever it gives you, that's what you are going to be using for your fold. And for the last one, you add 4 inches to your 15 inches, that's what you are going to be using for your fold. So after that, you just cut out each of them, and with that, your peplum is ready.